First Contact and Confusion. Admiral Vector of the Galactic Hegemony stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dawn, his 4 eyes narrowing at the peculiar sight before him. The mining operation his scout ships had detected in the frontier zone wasn't supposed to exist. This region of space hadn't been colonized yet, at least not by any recognized civilization. "Status report," he commanded, his secondary vocal cords adding the proper harmonics of authority to his voice. His sensor officer, Lieutenant Zix, manipulated the crystalline control interface with practiced expertise. "The vessels appear to be primitive, Admiral. Their hulls are composed of basic metals, and their propulsion systems rely on chemical reactions and crude nuclear fusion." Vector's head crest lifted in amusement. Another pre-FTL civilization that had managed to crawl out of their gravity well. The hegemony had protocols for this. Careful observation, subtle guidance, and eventual integration once they proved themselves worthy. But something wasn't quite right about these ships. Their energy signatures are unusual. Zix continued, confusion evident in her voice. "They're operating in an asteroid field that our surveys marked as too unstable for mining operations, yet they seem to be extracting resources efficiently." Vector watched as one of the smaller vessels maneuvered between 2 tumbling asteroids that should have crushed it. Instead, the ship executed a series of precise movements that seemed to defy the laws of physics, using the asteroid's own momentum to create a stable working space. "Open communications," Vector ordered. It was time to make their presence known. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing a face that made Vector blink all 4 eyes in succession. The alien was bipedal, with only 2 eyes and peculiar fur on top of its head. Its environment suit looked remarkably primitive, yet it somehow maintained perfect integrity in the harsh vacuum of space. "This is Captain Maya Rodriguez of the Earth Mining Corporation vessel Resourceful." The alien spoke, its words automatically translated by the hegemony's linguistic systems. "Welcome to our little operation. How can we help you today?" The casual greeting caught Vector off guard. Most species reacted with either fear or awe when first encountering the hegemony's massive ships. This human seemed about as concerned as if they were greeting a neighbor. "This is Admiral Vector of the Galactic Hegemony. You are operating in restricted space without proper authorization. Your mining activities must cease immediately." Captain Rodriguez's expression shifted to what Vector's xenopsychology training suggested was amusement. "Restricted space. We checked the standard navigational beacons before setting up shop. This sector was marked as unclaimed. Did we miss a memo?" "Standard navigational beacons." Vector's secondary heart skipped a beat. "Your species has decoded hegemony quantum encrypted markers." "Oh, those things." Rodriguez shrugged, a gesture that made Vector's crest twitch with irritation. "Yeah, our intern figured those out during her coffee break last week. Pretty elegant system, actually, though the encryption could use some updating. We thought they were public information since they were broadcasting on open frequencies." Vector felt a headache building behind his primary eyes. The quantum markers were supposed to be unbreakable, the product of millennia of hegemony technological advancement. An intern with a beverage had decoded them. "Your vessels appear to be operating with severely limited technological capabilities," he noted, trying to regain control of the conversation. "Yet you are performing mining operations that our own engineers deemed impossible in this region." Rodriguez grinned, another expression that Vector found unsettling. "Oh, we just had to get a bit creative with the local gravity fields. Here, let me show you something cool." Before Vector could respond, one of the human mining ships approached a massive asteroid that was spinning on multiple axes. Instead of avoiding it, the ship extended what looked like primitive mechanical arms. The crew somehow used the asteroid's chaotic motion to their advantage, creating a synchronized dance that shouldn't have been possible with their level of technology. "That's impossible," Lieutenant Zix whispered, her sensors going crazy. "They're using the asteroid's own rotational energy to power their extraction equipment. but their computers couldn't possibly calculate those trajectories fast enough. No computer calculations needed, Rodriguez explained cheerfully. That's just Steve. He's got a great sense of rhythm, and used to be a basketball player. Says it's all about feeling the flow. Vector's crest deflated completely. These humans were either the most brilliant engineers he'd ever encountered or completely insane. Possibly both. Captain Rodriguez, he said carefully, I believe we need to have a longer discussion about your species' capabilities, and perhaps review the hegemony's policies regarding restricted space. Sure thing. Why don't you dock with us? Fair warning, though. It's Taco Tuesday in the mess hall, and Chef Martinez gets pretty experimental with his salsa recipes. As Vector gave the order to prepare a diplomatic delegation, he couldn't shake the feeling that the galactic hegemony was about to learn some very humbling lessons about assumptions and the nature of technological advancement. And somehow, the humans seemed to be enjoying every minute of his discomfort. Lieutenant Zix summed it up perfectly. Sir, I don't think our first contact protocols covered this scenario. No, Vector agreed, watching as another human ship performed what should have been an impossible maneuver just because it was apparently more convenient than going around an obstacle. No, they definitely did not. Last edited 3 minutes ago. The impossible engineers. The diplomatic meeting aboard the Earth Mining Corporation vessel, Resourceful, was interrupted by a series of alarms that made Admiral Vector's crest bristle with concern. The humans, oddly enough, seemed more curious than alarmed. Status report. Captain Rodriguez called out, somehow managing to simultaneously drink from a container of what she called coffee without spilling a drop despite the ship's sudden vibration. Gravitational anomaly detected in the asteroid field, her science officer, Dr. Sarah Chen, reported while rapidly typing on what appeared to be a remarkably primitive keyboard. The unstable elements we've been extracting are causing a cascade reaction. At this rate, we're looking at a potential collapse of local spacetime. Vector immediately activated his neural link to the eternal dawn. This is precisely why this sector was restricted. Deploy the quantum stabilizers immediately. Begging your pardon, Admiral, Dr. Chen interjected, but your quantum stabilizers will only accelerate the collapse. The gravitational harmonics are inversely phased to standard containment procedures. Vector's secondary heart nearly stopped. Then we're all doomed. Even our most advanced systems can't contain an inverse phase collapse. We need to evacuate immediately. The humans exchanged glances that Vector's synapsychology training couldn't quite interpret. It wasn't fear or resignation, but something else. Excitement. Hey, Chief Engineer Patterson, Rodriguez called out over the ship's communication system. Remember that weird thing that happened with the coffee maker last week? A gruff voice responded. You mean when we accidentally created a localized time dilation field trying to brew espresso faster? Hard to forget. I'm still finding temporarily quantum-entangled coffee beans in my workshop. Think we could scale that up? There was a pause. Using the mining equipment's resonance fields and the weird way our jump drives interact with local spacetime. Yeah, probably. It'll be messy, though. Define messy, Vector demanded, his translator struggling to keep up with the rapid exchange of what seemed like nonsense. Well, Patterson's voice carried an undertone of amusement. We might temporarily turn all matter in a 3-kilometer radius into exotic coffee. But it should revert back to normal once the quantum fields stabilize. Vector's entire command staff stared in horror at the humans, who were now excitedly sketching out their plan on what appeared to be paper napkins from their mess hall. Dr. Chen was using different colored pens to annotate Patterson's calculations, occasionally pausing to correct what she called coffee-induced mathematical enthusiasm. This is madness, Lieutenant Zix whispered. They're going to attempt to contain an inverse phase collapse using beverage preparation equipment. Modified beverage preparation equipment, Dr. Chen corrected absently, still scribbling. The principle is actually quite simple. We just need to create a resonance cascade that mimics the molecular excitation pattern of our superheated coffee experiments, but tuned to the specific frequency of local spacetime. Simple. Vector's crest flattened in disbelief. Your species only achieved spaceflight 3 centuries ago. You shouldn't even understand the principles of quantum harmonics, let alone be able to manipulate them with kitchen appliances. Oh, we don't understand them at all. Patterson chimed in cheerfully as his team began repurposing mining equipment according to the napkin calculations. We just noticed they do weird things sometimes and learn to work with it. Like jazz, but with physics. The next 2 hours were the most stressful of Vector's long career. He watched in horrified fascination as the humans literally rebuilt their mining equipment into what they claimed was a quantum stabilization array, but looked more like a modern art installation designed by someone with an unhealthy obsession with coffee makers. The device shouldn't have worked. It violated at least 15 laws of physics that Vector knew of. Yet when the gravitational anomaly reached critical levels, Patterson activated his contraption with a casual, "Here goes nothing." There was a moment of absolute silence, followed by a smell that Vector sensors identified as French roast. The viewport showed a brief glimpse of what appeared to be a small galaxy made entirely of coffee. And then, everything stabilized. "Ha!" Patterson pumped his fist in the air. "Told you it would work. Though I think I just invented a new type of coffee. Anyone want to try some quantum-infused espresso?" Dr. Chen was already analyzing the readings. "The space-time distortion has been completely neutralized. Though I think we should study these readings. We may have accidentally discovered a new form of faster-than-light travel in the process. The math is fascinating." Vector watched as his own science team crowded around the humans' primitive displays, their professional dignity forgotten in their excitement to understand how this impossible solution had worked. His synapse psychology training had never prepared him for this level of casual violation of universal constants. "Captain Rodriguez," he said carefully, "I believe the Hegemony Scientific Council would be very interested in establishing a more formal exchange of ideas with your engineers." Rodriguez grinned. "Sure. Though fair warning. Next week we're trying to figure out why our microwave keeps creating temporary wormholes when we heat up leftover pizza. Might want to bring hazmat suits and snacks." As Vector composed his report to the Hegemony Council, he couldn't help but wonder if the galaxy was ready for humans and their peculiar brand of engineering. They had just saved an entire sector of space using principles they freely admitted they didn't understand, and their only concern seemed to be whether they could replicate their new coffee variant. The most disturbing part, he was starting to think that their approach made a strange kind of sense. Cultural shock. High Diplomat Conquest of the Galactic Hegemony had prepared extensively for their first official visit to Earth. They had studied human cultural documents, analyzed their governance systems, and even attempted to understand something called memes. None of it had prepared them for the reality. "And this is MIT," their guide, Dr. James Chen, announced as their transport descended toward a complex of buildings alongside a river. "One of our premier technological institutions." Conquest's assistant, Junior Diplomat Anxery, consulted their datavat. "According to our intelligence, many of your most significant technological breakthroughs originated here. We assume it must have the highest security protocols and strictest behavioral regulations." A group of students rushed past their landing pad, carrying what appeared to be a small fusion reactor cobbled together from spare parts and energy drink cans. Nobody seemed concerned. "Oh, that's just the annual engineering prank competition," Dr. Chen explained casually. "The rules are simple. Make something impossible, preferably funny, and try not to violate too many laws of physics, though we're pretty flexible on that last part." Conquest's secondary breathing bladder deflated in shock. "You encourage your brightest minds to prank each other with experimental technology. Best way to learn is to play." Chen shrugged. "Half our breakthroughs in quantum mechanics came from students trying to find increasingly elaborate ways to order pizza without leaving their labs. They passed a laboratory where a young human was arguing with what appeared to be a sentient artificial intelligence about proper coffee brewing temperatures. The AI had somehow manifested itself as a hologram wearing a chef's hat. Should we be concerned about that? Ingenuity whispered, noting how the AI was gesturing dramatically about the importance of water temperature. Oh, that's just BARISTA. Brewing Artificial Intelligence System for Taste Analysis, Chen said. One of our quantum computing projects gained sentience last month and decided it wanted to perfect the art of coffee making. It's actually quite good, though it can be a bit passionate about its opinions on bean roasting techniques. HFY had to remind themselves that this was the same species that had casually decoded their quantum encryption and stabilized a space-time anomaly with modified kitchen appliances. Your security protocols seem relaxed. Chen laughed. Security through chaos. Nobody can predict what we're going to do next if we don't know ourselves. Besides, BARISTA is too busy trying to achieve the perfect crema to cause any trouble. Though last week it did try to quantum entangle all the coffee beans on campus to ensure uniform brewing temperature. They continued their tour, each stop adding to HFY's growing sense of bewilderment. In one lab, researchers were using video game controllers to manipulate gravity fields. In another, someone had apparently taught bacteria to solve complex mathematical equations because, as the researcher explained, they were bored and the bacteria seemed interested. The diplomatic delegation's collective confusion reached its peak when they entered what Chen called the student center. The large space was filled with humans engaged in various activities that seemed to have no logical connection to advanced research. Is that group using antimatter containment fields to improve pizza delivery? Ingenuity asked, their voice rising several octaves. Yeah, the physics department's been in a friendly competition with the local pizzeria, Chen explained. They're trying to figure out if they can use quantum tunneling to ensure the pizza arrives before you even order it. There have been some interesting temporal paradoxes to work out, but they're making progress. HFY watched as a student casually adjusted calculations on a holographic display while eating something called a burrito with their other hand. Your species approaches advanced science with remarkable informality. We find tight regulations tend to stifle innovation, Chen replied. Besides, some of our best discoveries happen by accident. Did you know we discovered a new form of matter last year because someone spilled energy drinks into a quantum computer? We're still not sure how it works, but it makes great party decorations. The delegation passed a room where students were apparently teaching robot dogs to play fetch with plasma spheres. Nobody seemed concerned about the occasional small explosion. Your entire civilization seems to operate on principles of controlled chaos, HFY observed, trying to make sense of it all. Chen considered this. I wouldn't say controlled, exactly. We just embrace the chaos and try to point it in useful directions. It's like jazz. You have to know the rules really well to know how to break them properly. As if to emphasize his point, an announcement echoed through the building. Attention all students. Due to an unexpected success in the Quantum Cooking Club, today's lunch menu now exists in a superposition of states. Please be prepared for your sandwich to be simultaneously all possible sandwiches until observed. The physics department rates this paradox as mostly harmless. HFY turned all four eyes to Chen. How does your species maintain any form of order? That's the neat part, Chen grinned. We don't. We just make friends with the chaos and see where it takes us. Usually somewhere interesting, occasionally delicious, and almost always unexpected. Would you like to try the quantum sandwich? I hear it's simultaneously the best and worst sandwich ever made. As HFY composed their report to the Hegemony Council that evening, they struggled to find words to describe human educational and research methodologies. How could they explain a civilization that had turned scientific advancement into a form of entertainment, that treated the fundamental laws of the universe as friendly suggestions, and that somehow achieved breakthrough after breakthrough through what appeared to be a combination of accident, audacity, and sheer stubborn creativity? In the end, they simply wrote, "Traditional metrics of technological and social advancement may not apply. Exercise extreme caution in assumptions about human capabilities. Also recommend immediate study of this substance they call coffee. It may be key to understanding their improbable successes." Crisis point. The hegemony's central command center was in chaos, not the productive, creative chaos that humans seem to thrive in, but the genuine panic of a civilization facing an unprecedented threat. The massive holographic displays showed a spreading darkness that defied explanation, a wave of null space that consumed everything in its path. Admiral Vector stood beside Captain Rodriguez, both watching as another hegemony world went dark. The null wave had already devoured 3 solar systems, and their best scientists were helpless to stop it. "It's like nothing we've ever encountered," Vector's chief scientist reported, her crest fully flattened in distress. "The null wave simply unmakes reality. Our most advanced containment systems barely slow it down." Rodriguez was unusually quiet, sipping her ever-present coffee while studying the data scrolling across her antiquated tablet computer. "Hey, this energy signature looks familiar. Dr. Chen, doesn't this remind you of that thing that happened at the University Particle Accelerator last year?" Dr. Sarah Chen, who had been invited as part of the human diplomatic science team, peered at the readings. "You mean when the graduate students accidentally created a region of anti-reality while trying to heat up their lunch?" The hegemony scientists stopped their frantic calculations, all eyes turning to the humans. Vector's crest twitched. "You've encountered this phenomenon before." "Well, not exactly the same thing," Chen admitted. "Our incident was much smaller, and it was contained to the faculty break room. Though we did lose several microwaves to the void, and technically created a new form of sandwich that existed as pure mathematics. But you contained it," Vector pressed, trying to ignore the casual way the humans discussed creating tears in reality. "Oh yeah," Rodriguez nodded. "Turns out anti-reality doesn't play well with certain frequencies of background radiation. The students discovered that playing specific pop music through the lab speakers caused some kind of resonance that collapsed the field. We still don't know why, but we have theories about the quantum harmonics of catchy tunes." The hegemony scientific council erupted in overlapping harmonics of disbelief and argument. Vector raised all 4 hands for silence. "Are you suggesting we attempt to stop this extinction-level event with music?" "Not exactly," Chen said, already typing rapidly on her tablet. "But the principle might work. The null wave is similar to our anti-reality incident, just on a much larger scale. If we could generate the right kind of resonance field, we'd need something massive," Rodriguez mused. "Hey, Vector, those quantum stabilizers you guys use, could we reprogram them to emit modulated waves of background radiation?" "Theoretically, yes," Vector's chief engineer answered. "But the power requirements would be enormous. We'd need to synchronize hundreds of stabilizers across multiple star systems." Rodriguez grinned. "Or we could do what we did with the coffee maker incident and just make one really big one. Dr. Chen, remember that weird modification Patterson made to the mining ship's resonance fields? The one that accidentally turned asteroids into jazz-playing crystals. That could work." Chen was already sending messages to the human engineering team. "If we scale it up and combine it with hegemony quantum technology." What followed was the most bizarre engineering project in hegemony history. Human engineers worked alongside their alien counterparts, combining technologies in ways that made the hegemony scientists' crests twitch uncontrollably. They converted a small moon into what Patterson called the biggest speaker system in the galaxy, using principles that somehow involved coffee makers, quantum harmonics, and what humans called the universal power of sick beats. As the null wave approached the hegemony's core worlds, Vector watched the humans make final adjustments to their impossible contraption. "Captain Rodriguez, the fate of multiple civilizations rests on this plan. Are you certain it will work?" Rodriguez shrugged. "Honestly, no idea. But that's never stopped us before. Besides, if it doesn't work, reality ends anyway. So we might as well try something weird. That is not as reassuring as you seem to think it is. Trust me, Admiral. Sometimes the best solutions are the ones that sound completely insane right up until they save the universe. The moment of truth arrived as the null wave approached. Patterson, now sporting a t-shirt that read, "I broke physics, and all I got was this t-shirt," gave a thumbs up from his control station. Initiating Operation Cosmic Drop Beat, he announced with far too much enthusiasm for someone about to experiment with fundamental forces of reality. The modified moon-sized quantum stabilizer activated, sending waves of modulated background radiation rippling through space. The null wave's advance slowed, then stopped, then began to collapse in on itself as reality reasserted itself in ways that made hegemony physicists need to lie down and reconsider their careers. "It's working," Chen exclaimed, watching the readings. "Though we may have accidentally turned a few nearby asteroids into quantum amplifiers, they're currently broadcasting what appears to be a mix of classical music and space-time distortions. We can fix that later," Rodriguez said. "Probably. Maybe. At least they have good taste in music." As the crisis subsided and the cleanup began, Vector found himself reviewing the events that had led to this moment. The humans had saved multiple civilizations using technology they barely understood, principles they couldn't fully explain, and methods that seemed to defy logic itself. "Your species," he said to Rodriguez, "approaches problems in ways that make absolutely no sense." "Thanks," she beamed, taking it as a compliment. "Want to help us figure out why the quantum-enhanced asteroids are only playing jazz? We think it might have something to do with cosmic radiation having good rhythm." Vector's crest drooped. Somehow, he knew the Hegemony Science Division would never be the same after this collaboration with humanity. A new understanding. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Hegemony hadn't seen such a gathering in 10,000 years. Representatives from every member species packed the massive amphitheater, their combined voices creating a harmonic buzz of anticipation. At the center of it all stood Admiral Vector, preparing to deliver his final report on humanity to the High Council. The Council Chamber's quantum crystal architecture hummed with energy as Vector activated the holographic display. Behind him, Captain Rodriguez and her team sat calmly, Rodriguez somehow having smuggled in her inevitable cup of coffee despite the chamber's strict protocols about foreign substances. "Esteemed Council," Vector began, his crest raised in formal presentation mode. "3 standard cycles ago, we encountered a species that challenged everything we thought we knew about technological advancement, scientific progress, and the fundamental laws of reality themselves." The display showed footage from their first encounter with the human mining fleet. "We found them using what we considered primitive technology to accomplish impossible tasks. When faced with a crisis, they solved it using principles that violated our understanding of physics. When reality itself began to unravel, they saved us all using methods that our greatest scientists are still struggling to comprehend." A ripple of harmonic murmuring spread through the chamber. Vector continued, "But perhaps most importantly, they showed us that our entire approach to advancement might be unnecessarily rigid." The High Speaker's crest flickered with interest. "Explain, Admiral." "The hegemony has always believed that progress follows a predictable path. That technological advancement must occur in specific stages, that scientific understanding must precede practical application. The humans have demonstrated that this view is incomplete." Vector gestured to the human delegation. "They achieve breakthroughs not through careful, methodical research, but through what they call messing around and finding out. They solve problems not by following established protocols, but by trying whatever bizarre solution occurs to them first. And somehow, it works." The display showed footage from the null wave crisis, including the impossible device they'd built to save reality itself. "Their approach to science is entirely backwards by our standards. They don't fully understand the principles behind their innovations because they discover things by accident and then work backwards to figure out why their impossible solutions function. This sounds dangerous, one council member objected. Surely such chaos cannot be sustainable. Rodriguez raised her hand. Permission to demonstrate. The High Speaker, perhaps remembering the reports about human unpredictability, hesitated before nodding. Rodriguez pulled out her tablet and activated it. Suddenly, the chamber's quantum crystal architecture began to glow with new patterns, its efficiency noticeably increasing. "What did you do?" the High Speaker demanded, both alarmed and fascinated. "Oh, I noticed your quantum matrices were slightly out of alignment," Rodriguez shrugged. "Reminded me of how my coffee maker was acting last week. Simple fix. Just had to adjust the resonance frequency to match the natural harmonic of the crystals. Should increase your energy efficiency by about 300%. You compared our most advanced architectural technology to a beverage preparation device." "Yeah, physics is physics," Rodriguez grinned. "Sometimes you find universal principles in weird places, like last month when we discovered a new form of quantum entanglement because someone tried to teach their cat to dance." Vector watched the council's collective crests twitch in disbelief. "This is precisely my point," he continued. "The humans don't just think outside conventional boundaries. They appear to be completely unaware that such boundaries exist. And while this leads to what we would consider chaos, it also produces results we cannot ignore." The display shifted to show the various innovations that had emerged from human hegemony collaboration over the past cycles. New forms of faster-than-light travel, revolutionary approaches to energy generation, and solutions to problems that had stumped hegemony scientists for millennia. "I propose," Vector said carefully, "that instead of trying to integrate humanity into our existing framework, we recognize them as something unique. A species that thrives on chaos and transforms it into progress. They are not primitive, as we first thought, nor are they advanced in any way we understand. They are simply human." "And what of the risk?" another council member asked. "Their methods are unpredictable, their innovations untested by time." Dr. Chen spoke up from the human delegation. "We found that the universe itself is unpredictable and chaotic. Maybe the reason our methods work is that we've simply embraced that fact instead of trying to impose rigid order on it. Besides, we always test our innovations, eventually, usually after we've already used them to solve a crisis." The High Speaker was silent for a long moment, all four eyes focused on the humans. "And if we were to grant humanity full membership in the hegemony, how would you contribute to our civilization?" Rodriguez smiled. "Well, for starters, we've got some ideas about improving your faster-than-light drives using principles we discovered while trying to make the perfect pizza oven. Also, we think we might have accidentally solved your energy crisis last Tuesday. It was supposed to be a new coffee brewing method, but things got a little weird with the quantum mechanics." The chamber erupted in a mixture of horror, fascination, and what might have been laughter from the younger council members. Vector watched as the High Speaker's crest cycled through colors of deep thought. Finally, the High Speaker raised all four hands for silence. Perhaps it is time for the hegemony to embrace a little chaos. Humanity has demonstrated that there is more than one path to advancement. Their methods may be unconventional, but their results are undeniable." Rodriguez raised her coffee cup in a toast to unconventional methods and unexpected results, and maybe to finally figuring out why our quantum physics experiments keep turning into musical instruments. That's still bugging our scientists. As the chamber dissolved into discussion and debate, Vector reflected on how far they'd come from that first encounter with the mining fleet. The humans hadn't just changed the hegemony's understanding of technology and progress. They changed the way an entire galactic civilization thought about possibility itself. And somewhere in the background, he could swear he heard the faint sound of jazz music playing from those quantum-enhanced asteroids, still broadcasting their impossible symphony into the cosmos.